WFLA Now will begin momentarily. WFLA Now will begin momentarily. Live on WFLA Now, this is Hey JB. Here's JB Buno.
The final FBI report, one page, revealing Brian Laundrie reclaimed responsibility for the death of Gabby Petito in the notebook that was found at the Carlton Reserve in Florida. But the top question from the beginning, why is Gabby dead, remains unanswered. We're breaking down the aftermath of this long-awaited report and whether this is it on WFLA Now. Hey there, everybody. JB Buno here with you live on WFLA Now, the Monday after the Friday where this final FBI report was released towards the end of the day. We've had the weekend now really to process it, but quite frankly, it's just one page. It wasn't like the Moab report that was a full 100-plus pages long. It's a single page going through really just the timeline and some bullet points, highlights of the FBI's investigation. But the full investigation itself, details that were uncovered over the course of the investigation, not being released to the public. What we have, of course, is this final single page after months, many, many months of this FBI investigation into the death of Gabby Petito. You see Gabby Petito, you see Brian Laundrie. Also in the bottom right-hand portion of your screen, you see poll results. Now, in about 13 minutes from now, we're going to come back to our poll results across Facebook and Twitter. We are asking you, now let me make this clear what our poll question is, and I'll read the poll question for our audience. It's, do you feel the FBI released enough information in their final report on the death of Gabby Petito? We're asking you this question because this is a public report that was put out by the FBI. It came from the FBI's Office of Public Affairs. This single report meant to give you answers on the FBI and their months-long investigation. So, with it being a public report, we're asking you, the public, did you think it was enough? Did you think that the single page? Now, we know that a lot of people out there that are watching this live stream in particular are going to feel that likely it wasn't enough. You're always going to want more information. More information is better than less information. But we'll kind of get a better understanding of how many people out there really want there to be more information released in this FBI report that came back. So we're going to put away the poll results here for a short time. And we'll come back to it in about 10 minutes or so from now. But you can vote on the WFLA Facebook page, or you can also vote on my WFLA JB Twitter account. One of those two places, and we'll come back to the results here in just a moment. I'm solo here today. Let me explain that. On our previous WFLA Now streams, we've had various guests: Brian Enton, Josh Benson, Justin Shecker, Masa Saidi, Walt Buteau. We normally bring in a lot of our reporters. Why am I solo here today? It's the Monday after this report was dropped, and it's also a day where Monday is a very important day in the newsroom. We are attacking stories and beginning the work week by taking a look at some of the stories that our viewers are paying the most attention to for this particular week. So I'm solo here today. Our other reporters and anchors here at WFLA and with News Nation tackling other reports at this time. So what we're going to do on this stream is we're going to focus on your hashtag HeyJB questions and comments on Twitter, on Facebook as well. So hello to our YouTube audience. We'll also be talking to you guys on YouTube. But the report was released Friday, January 21st, 2022. And really, it's several paragraphs and then the timeline. By now, this is now several days after the report was released. So by now, you've likely read this report in detail. Maybe if you've been following the story from the very beginning, you have been Uh, Maybe you've read this multiple times. This is the report that we've been waiting for months. We didn't know if this report was going to come in January, February, July, August, December, 2023, 2024. We had no idea when this report was going to be released. It came relatively early in 2022. It came towards the end of January. And it's several paragraphs, including a statement here from the FBI Denver Division Special Agent in charge, Michael Schneider. It also goes into when they opened up the investigation. It goes into when Gabrielle Petito was found deceased. And then it goes into the timeline. Most of the timeline now, we knew this. We've been covering this, of course, under the microscope. Gabby Petito's disappearance and then death, and then the homicide investigation that was launched, then the disappearance of Brian Laundrie, and then, of course, his remains being found. The timeline, it all adds up for the most part. I mean, it all adds up. Everything that we knew is here, except for a couple of points that we're going to highlight here in just a second. So you have the timeline and the report, and then, of course, the FBI thanking all the various agencies that assisted them. It's always a team effort when you're talking about an FBI investigation and partnering with other law enforcement agencies. It's not done alone. It's usually working in tandem with local and state law enforcement departments. So the two big things to highlight is this second bullet point from the bottom. Upon further search of the area, investigators found human remains later confirmed to be Mr. Laundrie, along with a backpack, notebook, and a revolver. A review of the notebook revealed written statements by Mr. Laundrie claiming responsibility for Miss Petito's death. So the long-awaited question getting answered with that one bullet point, that was the notebook a suicide note? Was its primary function to serve as a suicide note? And based on this bullet point, we have that answer to be yes. The notebook being recovered, revealing that he did leave a message behind. A message was left for whomever was going to find that notebook, and it revealed that he had claimed responsibility for Gabby's death. Now, we don't know what's in the note. We're going to get into this. We're going to talk a lot about this notebook here in just a moment. But I also want to talk about the second bullet point from the top. After Miss Petito's death, there were several text messages identified between Mr. Laundrie's telephone and Miss Petito's telephone. The timing and content of these messages are indicative of Mr. Laundrie attempting to deceive law enforcement by giving the impression that Miss Petito was still alive. The text message, we've been talking about the final text messages that came in, including to Nicole Schmidt, Gabby's mother, that just didn't feel right, didn't add up. No service in Yosemite, referring to the grandfather as Stan. There's so many, just the oddities of those final text messages. And we're going to talk about this more in a little bit also. So here's what we're going to do. You can use hashtag HeyJB across Twitter, across Facebook. We're going to really focus on Twitter. We try to focus on Twitter. A lot of our live streams in the past, we've done, Facebook and we've done YouTube. We're going to really focus on Twitter. So, hey, if you're dual screening it, hashtag HeyJB, and we'll try to load up some of the tweets that are coming in. I asked, what are the most pertinent to you unanswered questions that remain? And we're also, again, let's come back to the poll results graphic. 7 minutes from now, we're going to come back to the poll results on whether or not you think that whether did the FBI release enough information after this painstaking, extremely long, extensive investigation into Gabby's death. It was one page enough? Did that one page satisfy you? We're going to talk about that here in just a moment. We'll put that away. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. Let's talk about Tanya's tweet. And again, this is hashtag HeyJB on WFLA Now. We highlight those hashtag HeyJB comments. It's a form of you letting us know that you want us to spotlight your tweet or spotlight your Facebook or YouTube comments. So use hashtag HeyJB and we can kind of bring it into our interactive live stream. Okay, hashtag HeyJB from Tanya. I want to know motive. And I want to know what the Laundries knew and when. We're starting here with Tanya because motive is the number one. Why is Gabby dead? We believe that we know why Brian is dead. We believe that Brian claimed his own life. We don't know for certain, but of course we believe based on all of the pieces of information that we have that Brian claimed his own life in the aftermath of taking Gabby's life. But why is Gabby dead? What happened? That answer, that question is still number one. And maybe the better poll question would have been, if that had been addressed in the report, would that have been satisfactory for the, because I've been on Twitter the last several days. I've been on social media. I've been checking what you guys have been saying, and there's this consensus out there that that there was motive was just overwhelmingly absent from this report. Was there anything that Brian wrote in the notebook that explained why Gabby is dead? So Tanya wants to know motive. I want to know motive, and I'm sure you do too. Let's get to Cheyenne's comment. #HeyJB. One of my unanswered questions is they searched the reserve for weeks, even where he was found. I know it was underwater at a point, but they did use dive teams during the search. How did they still miss him? He wouldn't have been just skeletal remains then. Cheyenne, thank you for the #HeyJB comment. So I think I can kind of answer this one. Remember, the Carlton Reserve is massive in scope and size, massive, and I'm a diver. I'm scuba certified. I dive quite a bit, and diving and covering a large area is extremely difficult. You don't move very quickly when you're underwater, especially when you're partaking in an activity like searching for something, like search and recovery. You're searching for something, so you have to really be extremely thorough when you're underwater. And to cover the massive reserve, it was difficult from a helicopter. Can you imagine how difficult it would be with a scuba tank and fins and mask and snorkel and all the dive gear that you would have doing it underwater? So there were dive teams there, but I can speak from diving quite a bit in Florida and never in a place like the flooded reserve, but just being down there, also probably visibility extremely poor with the murkiness of the water, just to be able to find the remains, probably not even needle in a haystack, needle in 40 haystacks. The real question, I'm gonna take this question and kind of morph it, Cheyenne. I'm gonna say the real question is, how did the dogs apparently are trained to pick up scents of human remains even underwater, and can do so over a very vast area. The dog's not picking up on that scent is probably even more of a pertinent question. Were the dogs not in the same area, or was it? How did the timeline add up? And there's a lot of questions that go into the search. But the remains, it's here in the report. The remains were found along with a notebook and a revolver and a backpack. So hopefully that answers your question. How many more minutes do we have on the poll? All right, we got about 2.5 minutes. So last call really to vote in our poll. You can do it. And we're going to bring up the results here. This is a better way of us understanding how you guys are feeling out there. So you can do it with on the WFLA Facebook page, on our live stream. Just join the live stream and you'll see the poll pop up. Or you can do it on the WFLA JB Twitter page as well. So we'll come back. We'll leave that on screen. #HeyJB from Kellyanne. Do you think that we will ever actually see what was written in the notebook? I prefaced this question from Kellyanne, and thank you, Kellyanne, for the comment. I preface this by saying we don't know where the notebook is. That's interesting to me. We don't know where the notebook is right now. It's clearly a direct piece of evidence in the homicide of Gabby Petito. It's connected to her death. So the notebook, we don't know if it's with the FBI. We don't know if it was returned to the Laundrie family. We imagine that it is still with the FBI because it's part of the investigation, but the investigation appearing to be closed now. Could the FBI have photographed and taken all of the necessary samples off of it, and because it had some value to the family, returned it to Chris and Roberta Laundrie in Northport, Florida? We really don't know. I think it's more likely that it's still with the FBI. But is it possible that it was returned to the Laundrie? Sure, but Stephen Bertolino, attorney for the Laundrie family, is not commenting right now on where the notebook is located. So that's first, Kellyanne. Do you think we will ever actually see what is written in the notebook? It depends on who has it. Now, here's the thing. If it's with the FBI, I think it's an extraordinarily slim chance that we'll ever see what's written in the notebook. It's not going to make it to court. Not going to make it to. It's not going to make it to court. It's not going to make it to a trial of any kind. So if it's not going to make it to court, not going to make it to a trial, a FOIA request could get lost for years. We'll talk more about FOIA requests in just a minute. And then if it's with the Laundries have zero motivation. There's no reason that they would ever release the contents of the notebook. Unless they put it in their own memoir, their own book, or something to that effect, and they wanted to tell their version of the story. So the chances of us finding out what is actually written in the notebook are extraordinarily slim, very, very slim. We might get some context, but I want to make this clear too. People have been tweeting at me what looks like a scan of a notebook, and people are going to be photoshopping and making fake notebook entries and trying to pass it off as what Brian Laundrie would have written in that notebook. I want everybody to be very, very cautious out there, because there's going to be so many copycats, and they're already. It's not even 72 hours later. There's already a lot of fake ones out there. So be very, very cautious of what you find across social media. The poll results are in. Let's get to the poll results. And again, this is across Facebook, and this is also across Twitter. And we asked in our poll question, do you feel the FBI released enough information in their final report on the death of Gabby Petito? And this is combination of Facebook and Twitter. And 89% of people say no, and 11% of people say yes. Roughly 1 in 10 believed that they were satisfied, 90% roughly. Now, this is an unscientific poll. If you're watching this live stream, you're probably still clamoring for information. That's going to skew the result of this poll. So it's an unscientific poll. But it does go to speak to how many people out there still want, at least there's dozens of questions that still remain on this story, dozens of smaller questions that we'll probably never get the full answers to. However, I think people just want, really more than anything, they want the answer to the one biggest question of all, and it's, why is Gabby dead? What happened? Something happened on the road. They're on this cross-country road trip, engaged, seemingly happy based on social media, until they weren't. Until the Moab video came out, and we saw a very, very different Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito. It's very a 180 from what we were seeing. So happy-go-lucky in their Instagram and YouTube videos. So, what happened and why? I think that's the biggest one of all. See a lot of questions coming in on Facebook as well. Let's go to a quick Facebook comment. And we'll get this one on screen. Mary Kimmy Blake, #HJB. I don't think the FBI cares if the public wants to know more. Both families may not want the whole story out. And it's totally true. An 8-hour visit the Petito and Schmidt family had with the FBI last week. And the FBI, of course, treating this with sensitivity in regards to the family. But they also, too, with the insane amount of resources that have been committed, they did, it's been... experts have been coming on, analysts have been coming on and telling us it's been expected. This report was expected. Just how extensive it was going to be was really subject to interpretation. And this is relatively I think when you have the Moab report coming out being 100+ pages, and then this report coming out and it being a single page, it leaves the public seeking more as to why. But was there ever any page amount that was going to satisfy the public? If it was 3 pages, people would ask for 4. If it was 20, they would have asked for 30. You could look at it that way as well. A lot of votes still coming in an interactive poll. Let's go to more Twitter comments. And again, you can read the very latest on the report on WFLA.com. This is more of a where do we go from here live stream and answering or looking at what you have as the most top unanswered questions in this case and whether or not there's ever going to be answers coming to light. Hashtag KJB from Black Sheep Inc. Hello there. What did Brian tell his parents when he returned in Gabby's van without Gabby? What was written in the notebook? All right, what was written in the notebook we just talked about? Let's focus on this first one from Black Sheep. What did Brian tell his parents when he returned in Gabby's van without Gabby? You go on this cross-country road trip. You show back up at your parents' house in Northport, Florida, and you do so with your fiance's van without your fiance, who isn't anywhere to be found. What do you explain to your parents? Do you say Gabby went home to New York? It's not working out. What happens? What happens in that reality? And also too, I'll take this question too, and this is a question I've always thought about too. Did Brian? It's a long way. It's almost the entirety of the country, if not even longer, because it's diagonal. It's a long way from Wyoming, Utah. It's a very long way. Teton County to Sarasota County in Florida. Wyoming to Florida is a 2-day drive if you're really going and for extended hours on that drive. Probably even longer than that. But what did Brian make any calls? Did Brian call his parents on the way home to say that he was coming home? Whether or not it had anything to do with Gabby, did he alert his parents that he was going to be coming home back to Florida? And then what kind of follow-up questions were there? If you're Chris and Roberta, you've had Gabby live with you at the house in Northport. Aren't you curious as to why you're coming home now and what has transpired and where Gabby is? What the parents knew is also a very big question. But let's talk about that, because right now, Chris and Roberta Laundrie have been cooperative, according to the FBI, in their investigation. The Northport Police Department has said that there was a lack of cooperation early on when they were in charge of the investigation. However, the FBI has not given us really any indication that there was anything that was going to lead to charges being filed. And Jennifer Coffindaffer, who is with the who you frequently see on News Nation. She's been with us on WFLA now. She's a former FBI agent. She's our go-to FBI expert. She's great. And she was on News Nation, and she was asked a question from News Nation's Marnie Hughes as to whether or not there could be charges filed after this, in the aftermath of this final report coming out. And the chances of that are virtually non-existent. Will the Laundries ever face any charges is a big question that I see a lot on Twitter. And the answer right now is a resounding no. It's a resounding no at this time. And again, Coffindaffer seemingly under the belief that it'd be out of nowhere, out of left field, a complete shock if charges were randomly filed after the conclusion of this investigation and the issuing of this report. What did Brian tell his parents? Well, more on what Brian said or didn't say in a moment with some of these questions. A lot of these might be repeats. Brooke Mondier, hello there to Brooke. Hashtag KJB. Will we ever find out what he said in the notebook exactly? If you're asking me, you could do a Freedom of Information Act request, a FOIA, as we call it in news, and you can put in a FOIA, but a FOIA to a local municipality, a county government, even a state, is going to be so much more simple and straightforward, depending on the municipality and depending on the state, versus an FBI, a FOIA for an FBI homicide investigation. I have this when I think of trying to get information from a FOIA request from a federal investigation, an FBI investigation, my mind always goes to, and we'll kind of go kind of pop culture here. My mind goes to the final shot of Indiana Jones, Indiana Jones, and Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's this final shot where the Ark of the Covenant is in the hands of the U.S. government, and it gets stored in a wooden box. Anybody I'm going to go to YouTube. I'm going to bring up the YouTube comment section here. If anybody knows the scene that I'm talking about, give me a thumbs up. It's the final shot of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where there's just tens of thousands of wooden boxes, and the Ark of the Covenant is brought in there, and it's seemingly the final shot of the movie is that the Ark is never going to be found, is basically what they leave you with, because it's just in this endless warehouse filled with unidentifiable wooden boxes. And that's what I think of when I think of trying to get information from the FBI, an FBI investigation of this magnitude. Brian Enton, I watched some of his stuff from News Nation, and I agree with him completely. A FOIA request for an FBI investigation results could take years, decades. You could be in a different chapter of your life by the time those results come back. And even if those results come back, they could be heavily redacted. It's going to be, of course, we're going to do our job. I see a lot of thumbs up in the YouTube comment section. We're going to do our due diligence and of course file those FOIA requests so that we can just get the ball rolling on getting this information. But it depends on when and how much they give and whether or not it's redacted, and so many variables come into play that give me, I'll just kind of give you my 2 cents, very little hope that avenue is going to yield any results as far as satisfying you guys, the public, and satisfying us as journalists as well, as to what really went on with the investigation with the FBI and what they were able to determine over the course of their months-long investigation. Let's get to Team Smith, #KJB. What did Brian spend $1,000 on that he took from Gabby, and why did he really go back to Florida and leave Gabby for that week? Well, we know that he came home, he was at the storage unit, and Brian spending, $1,000. It might have been, of course, connected to travel expenses, but the federal arrest warrant was issued for use of unauthorized access devices, which is using a debit card or credit card or a financial device, even like Apple Pay. Using that illegally is the crime of use of unauthorized access devices, which is why that arrest warrant was put out by the FBI. And so it's interesting, I think this is the only time I've ever seen somebody ask this question, especially now, and as we get sort of, as we now have the FBI report actually being released. Yeah, and two, it's so you go across the country with your fiance, the love of your life. You're going to spend the rest of your lives together, and you're on this road trip, and you leave randomly, and you take a flight back to Florida to go check out your storage unit, and then you return days later, and you leave your fiance in a foreign section of the country. Gabby had, to my understanding, had never been to that section of the country, never been to Wyoming. Yeah, I've never been to Wyoming or Utah. Hello to everybody from Wyoming and Utah. I have never been to that section of the country. And so Gabby hadn't. She's in a place that is completely unfamiliar to her, and the one person that she knows, her fiance, supposed to be there for you. Your partners are supposed to be there for each other. Leaves to go to Florida for nearly a week, and then comes back. That also too is completely strange, totally bizarre. Totally, there's no way to sugarcoat it. It's just a little strange. Why didn't you go if you guys had something pressing to handle? Why not go back to Florida together, or why not drive back together? Or why not just end the trip? If the trip did take a turn for the worse, just end it. Drive back to Florida, or Gabby could have flown back to New York. There's so much more that we don't know about the intricacies of how their relationship functioned, and of course, the relationships between with the families. Of course, you have Brian and you have Brian and Gabby. You have You have the Schmitz, you have them on Long Island, you have Joe Petito and Tara Petito down in Florida, on more the East Coast side of Florida in Vero Beach. You've got in Sarasota County, you've got the Laundries. So there's a lot of moving parts here. But why they were separated and why one came home is, and one stayed in that area, it's still completely strange and not fully understood as to why that happened. Here's Jennifer. Jennifer, we were just talking about earlier. I asked unanswered questions, and she said, yes, of course, JB, still so many questions that people have. And this was one of the tweets that, or the replies that we got that got just the most likes. Big thanks to Jennifer for all the work that she does. She's the go-to analyst for News Nation, and she's been on with us on WFLA Now. Give her a follow on social. She's great. Brittany Broderick, #HJB. Is there any foundation that could lead to the NPPD being investigated for their handling of the case? This is interesting. The Moab report comes out because there was a review of the conduct of the officers that responded to the domestic dispute call between Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito. And that report, of course, came out and determined that that Gabby is the one that could have had charges filed against her, and that there were mistakes, unintentional mistakes, as they put it, that were made as they reviewed the incident, and they had all the body camera video that many of you have seen by now. Could there be a review of Northport Police? Likely not at this stage, but there has been, and I know from reading your comments, tremendous amounts of criticism towards the Northport Police Department, especially way early on before the FBI took over as the lead investigative agency. The Northport Police Department would come out, Public Information Officer Josh Taylor would come out later and say that one of the reasons for the mix-up of not knowing where Brian was because when they thought that they saw Brian Laundrie, when in reality it was one of his parents, that it was Roberta Laundrie, which of course received a lot of activity on social media, a lot of are you serious comments, because people were putting up Brian Laundrie, myself included, Brian Laundrie and Roberta Laundrie side by side and trying to understand as to how you could mistake one for the other. A lot of criticism for the Northport Police Department, but let's not forget that, too, this was an extremely complicated, complex case from the beginning. But to Brittany's question, could there be NPPD being investigated for their handling of the case? Is there a chance that they're investigated? Likely, I'd be completely surprised if that happened. But I will say this: I reached out to Northport Police this morning, and let's see if I can find the response. I reached out to Northport Police Public Information Officer Josh Taylor, who of course was on with us on WFLA Now, and I asked him, now that the FBI investigation is over, are you available for an interview? The FBI has closed their investigation, and it's for them, they're closing the door on it. So can we please interview you? I put out that request to Josh Taylor. The request was denied, and I'll just read his entire email here. Hello, we do not have any interviews. Hello, we have not done any interviews on the case in months. We have provided the following statement. The Northport Police Department has been briefed by the FBI on the soon-to-be closing of their investigation into the Gabby Petito-Brian Laundrie case. We are thankful for the collaboration with the many agencies involved. The dedicated men and women who serve the Northport community have worked tirelessly to help provide answers in this case. We hope that all the efforts will provide some closure for all those impacted by this tragic event. There will be no further comment at this time. Respectfully, Josh Taylor of Northport Police. So didn't want to be interviewed, and or at least declining our interview request and putting out that statement. So Northport Police seems to be done with this, the FBI wrapping up as well. I think the FBI in large part also too is done with this, and now it comes down to, let's make this clear. The people want information. People want to know. They were emotionally invested in this case. Some people would wake up and spend most of their day for a period in September and October thinking about this story and checking Twitter for updates. And if you missed a Brian Enton tweet, or if you missed a WFLA live stream, or if you missed some new piece of information on Reddit or TikTok or Discord, you felt like you were lacking. There were people that were living this case every single day, emotionally attached to it, unlike any story I've ever seen. So people just want there to be answers now that this FBI report is out, and now that the FBI is turning the page, so to speak. They want answers more than any. They want the answer, of course, to why is Gabby dead? But there's others. What was in the notebook? What was written in the notebook? How long of a note was it? Did he mention this person by name? Did he mention whether did he mention his all of these things? They want to know what was in the notebook. And other intricacies of the investigation. Let me make this clear. Getting information from the FBI now is going to be extremely difficult. They're not. My first thought when they put out this release was there any mention of a press conference? There's no press conference happening. This one-page report is it. There's going to be FOIA requests by journalists, including myself and others, who are going to try to get this information from the FBI and information, that they gathered over the course of their investigation. But again, making this clear, the best chance for us to get the truth, odds-wise, just if you're just wanting information, the best chance is through these families. It's through the Petito family, it's through the Schmidt family, it's through the Laundrie family. They are the ones who have been briefed, likely with all of the information based on what the FBI has found. To spend 8 hours with the FBI, that is a long time. I know from talking to Stephen Bertolino, the Laundrie family attorney, there's been a lot of contact between the FBI and between Bertolino. So the FBI is think of it as a 10-foot tall steel vault. You can spend weeks, months, years trying to pick that lock and try to get into that vault. But it's going to be extraordinarily difficult. The best chance to find out information is from these families. And whenever these families feel comfortable, if ever, to share more about what has transpired and whether or not they feel comfortable giving more information that they learned from the FBI or they learned from some other means. So everyone wanting more information from the FBI, it's of course we do. Of course we want more information from the FBI, but the chances of getting it are extraordinarily slim. Let's go to the next tweet. #KJB, did Brian send text messages between his and Gabby's phones as if they were chatting with each other after she died, perhaps acting like they left each other? Or did he just answer her text messages from others, or both? This is a great question from Aaron Glow. Aaron, thanks a lot for tweeting it out. It's a phenomenal question, and we don't know, but let's read this line one more time from the actual report. And it says, after Miss Petito's death, there were several text messages identified between Mr. Laundrie's telephone and Miss Petito's telephone. The timing and content of these messages are indicative of Mr. Laundrie attempting to deceive law enforcement by giving the impression that Miss Petito was still alive. So I'm going to read that part again for Aaron and for our viewers. There were several text messages identified between Mr. Laundrie's telephone and Miss Petito's telephone. So between the two is how I read that. But there were also the other text messages that were sent from Gabby's phone. That just, the family said, this is bizarre. That's not how Gabby texts. You know how somebody texts if you text them enough, especially mother to daughter, right? So it in that bullet point, it just reads to me as between the two phones. But I was wondering the same thing because of the Stan text message, how Gabby would never refer to her grandfather as Stan. The no service in Yosemite text, which was also totally bizarre, and one that we went over in painstaking detail on previous live streams. But based on this, it's several text messages, multiple, between Brian and Gabby's phones that were trying to give off the impression and to deceive law enforcement by giving them the impression that she was still alive. But could there also have been text messages, replies from Gabby's phone sent to Gabby's family to give off the impression that she was alive? Absolutely. It's just not mentioned. It's just not mentioned in this report. Nick, hashtag HJB. I've always wondered if Brian's sister ever asked on the camping trip why Brian wasn't there, or excuse me, why Gabby wasn't there, or why she didn't inquire where Gabby was. Maybe she did, but never heard much if she did. That would have been my first question. Yeah, let's not forget about Cassie Laundrie, who was at that camping trip at Fort DeSoto in early September, the first week of September, and she had to have asked as well, where's Gabby? How was your trip? Where'd you go? Love the videos. Did you snap any cool pictures? Did you have any, did you meet anybody? If my sibling went on a cross-country road trip, I'd have a million questions. I want to know all about it. You're seeing the country. You're going to national parks. You're enjoying an unfamiliar, especially after the pandemic. My God, the pandemic, we're all just watching Netflix and Hulu and Amazon at this time, even now still. And to hear somebody tell you, a loved one tell you about their trip across the country, I'd be fascinated to learn more about it. So people wanting to know, Nick, you're not alone. A lot of people want to know when Cassie inevitably asked, where's Gabby? And how's things with Gabby? Or tell me more about your trip with Gabby and where's she now? There had to have been some exchange, right? It's only natural between siblings or natural between family members on a camping trip. What else are you gonna do by a campfire? Yes, eat s'mores. Yes, eat s'mores, as we've noted on a previous stream. But you're gonna talk a lot, and how that didn't come up, Nick, you're far from alone in asking that question. Hashtag KJB, can the Petito family give out details from what the FBI told them, or do they have to agree to keep it private? The FBI can issue recommendations. They can say, we think it's in your best interest, or we think it's best if you don't speak about the case publicly, or wait. But really, what the Petito family and the Petitos and the Schmitz, who they're going to listen to is Rick Stafford, their attorney. Their attorney is, and I know from conversations, they have really been putting a lot of faith in Rick to help them guide, be guided throughout this process. And sure, the FBI can look at you and say, we would, we recommend this or recommend that, or it's our preference of this or that. But really, the Petitos and the Schmitz are going to listen to Rick Stafford as to what they want to do and how they want to release information. But there's absolutely zero doubt in anyone's minds, and we, of course, we all know this. All of us know this, that the families know a lot more, especially after their recent visits with the FBI, or their recent contact with the FBI. They know a lot more than the public does. It's just a matter of whether or not they, in time, will feel comfortable or sharing more, and that's to them. And is anybody going to have any ill will against Nicole Schmidt or Joe Petito if they choose to never talk about this ever again? No. Absolutely not. They're grieving parents. Same for Tara and same for Jim. Grieving parents. And so if they choose to never talk about this publicly ever again and not do interviews, and that is 1,000,000% their prerogative. With everything that they have endured, they can do whatever they wish. And so, will they speak in time? It's anyone's guess. It's up to them. It's an extremely personal decision. But the FBI isn't going to put any, the FBI isn't going to make them sign an NDA, like a non-disclosure agreement, and make it ironclad and say, we're going to tell you all this information, but you can't ever say anything about it. That's not really how it works. Again, the Petitos, the Schmitz, they're gonna follow Rick Stafford and do what they think is best for them and their family, and really the foundation, the Gabby Petito Foundation, which they're really working hard on. They've got a fundraiser coming up, and they're really trying to make a difference and prevent tragedies like this from happening in the future, helping out other families of missing persons in this country. And they're going to be focusing on other serious issues that are very much deserving of more attention. And if they can use what has happened in their lives to inspire people to participate in these conversations and donate to causes that will help us get closer to solutions and farther from problems, that's exactly what they're going to do. And that's when we had them on WFLA Now, when we had the family on WFLA Now, that was clear to all of us, me and all of you, that was their top priority. Just a few more minutes. We've got about another 5 or so minutes for your #HJB questions and comments. Jojo, #KGB, have you talked or texted with the Petito Schmidt family since the final report came out? If so, did they share anything with you that you could share with us? Anything we can help with? This question is also for Brian Enton. I'm in contact with the family. I talked to Nicole. I talked to Joe. I try to do my best to just, it's difficult. It can be difficult as a journalist. And they might be watching right now. And it can be difficult as a journalist because as a journalist, it's your job to stay in contact with people that are at the center of a story that you're covering. But if you're too close, if you're texting too much or you call too much, if you're too close, then you're a nuisance, and that's the last thing you want to be to grieving parents. You don't never want to be a nuisance. You want to be as respectful as possible. So you don't want to badger, but also you want to make sure that they know that if there's that you're working with them in covering this story and trying to do so as respectfully as possible. So it's difficult. So yes, I have been in contact with them, and nothing to share really at this time. But I think that I think I'll just say that there's so much energy behind the foundation that they really want to do some good, and they're hopeful. They're hopeful that the foundation can really spark some incredible change. And again, if they're watching, and the Petito Schmitz have been watching a lot of streams over the many months. In fact, that's how we were able to get introduced. I just wish them all the best, and it's been. I know it's been an extremely emotional ordeal these last few days, getting the pretty much the conclusion of the FBI's investigation, and now looking to what is next. And for them, likely what is next is really trying to channel some positive energy out there into the foundation. And so anything we can help with, JoJo, that was the question that she asked in the tweet. Yeah, you can. You can follow the foundation online. You can look to help in those causes. And they're going to be doing a lot more over the course of the year as far as what they want to do to help out and make the world a better place. And so I really encourage you to, if you want to help them, it's all through the foundation. And we'll pass it along. Just a couple more minutes. Jordan, #AJB, a simple one. I want to know what the Laundries knew. I think we all do want to know what the Laundrie family knew. But it's I'm just thinking we really have no clue what they knew. We have no idea, because there's no law in this country, law anywhere, that says that a son has to tell the truth to their mother and father. That's what it comes down to, you guys. It does. Brian, there is a scenario at play where Brian, we've talked about this on previous streams with others, where something terrible happens. between he and Gabby. He kills her, and he can't bring himself to tell his parents, so he fabricates, whether it's for himself and his own purposes, or whether it's within his own self, within his own conscience, whatever his intentions were, that he fabricated this lie to give to his parents to perhaps elude the guilt that came with doing something so incredibly sinister. Is there anything more sinister than killing the person that you're supposed to spend the rest of your life with? It's a grotesque and despicable act to do that. And manual strangulation, a crime of passion, and to do that is an extremely it's an act of evil. To kill the person that you love most in the world is an act of evil, and when it's done intentionally. And did Brian tell his parents that he was capable of such a thing? Could you? It's difficult to put yourself in that mindset. But if you just did the worst thing that you're ever going to do in your entire life, can you tell somebody about it? Who can you tell about it? Is it, or, and we've seen this with other cases involving murderers, some who commit the act of murder will create a fabricated reality within their own self-conscious where they don't accept the reality that they did it, and they create they lose grip on reality, and they choose to cope by not accepting the fact that they did it and creating some alternate reality where they didn't do it and something else happened. We don't know what happened in Brian Laundrie's head, and we don't know whether or not he told his parents the truth. We don't know what they knew. But I know that a lot of people want to know what Brian told his parents and whether or not it was the truth or whether or not it was a lie. I've been thinking quite a bit about what the drive must have been like. I've talked about this on previous streams, but let me just bring this up. When I go on road trips, your mind just wanders, does it not? When you're on a long road trip, especially alone. The longest road trip I ever did in my life solo was I think 14 hours by myself, and you do a lot of thinking on the road. All right, yeah, maybe you'll play some music, but I don't know what Brian was doing on this trip back, but you do a lot, even with music, you do a lot of thinking on the road. And what went on in his mind after he killed his fiance is something that I've been thinking about. Again, I've noted earlier I did not go to school to be a journalist. I went to school to be a psychologist. So I've been thinking quite a bit about what was going on in his head and how you cope with doing something like that, where your mind goes after killing somebody that you were going to spend the rest of your life with, where your mind goes in such a scenario. It's unknown to all of us, and then what he actually told his parents, we really don't know. We really don't know. I think we're coming to the end of the tweets. Hashtag HJB, will we ever know what was written in the notebook, and also know what truly happened with Gabby, like why he took her life? We've covered a lot of these questions, Cindy, but yeah, I don't the exact wording in the notebook. But what's interesting about the notebook, real quick, is that it was intact. We had so many experts weigh in online about whether or not the water was going to get to the notebook, and whether or not there was any indentation techniques that could bring it out if the ink was smudged, and so many different discussions about how the FBI and how forensics examiners would go really into that notebook. But could it have been as simple as picking it up, and were they able to read it that day at the Carlton Reserve? Did they, when was it legible or readable? When was it that the FBI knew? I don't know. Hashtag HJB, are Gabby's parents allowed to talk about the contents of the notebook if they want? If they know it, if they know the contents of the notebook. We have no information at this time that leads us to believe that Gabby's parents or step-parents know word for word what was in the notebook. They might know every word. They might have seen the notebook, or images, snapshots of the notebook. They might have, they might have been given highlights or a text-based version, or they might not have been given anything other than what was in the report. We really don't know. I just know that they are, depending on what they do know, they're going to be following the advice of their attorney. And let me tell you too, this family is an extremely strong unit. They are in constant contact with each other, and they do everything as a team. I've seen it because I've spent time with them in person. They don't make decisions for themselves individually. They are a collective family unit. To Gabby, they were a 4 co-parenting unit, and they took that very, very, very seriously as far as dealing with this with a team-based approach. So if they do decide to talk about the notebook, they're not going to do it because Joe woke up one day, Gabby's dad woke up one day and said, I feel like talking about it, or same with Nikki. It's going to be the 4 of them collectively coming to the determination, and likely talking with their attorney as well to determine the best way to go about it. It's up to them. And this brings us back to Tanya's tweet. I want to know motive, and I want to know what the Laundries knew and when. And then it also brings us back to our poll results, our final poll results. It's now crept up to 90%. Poll, do you feel the FBI released enough information in their final report on the death of Gabby Petito? 90% say no, 10% say yes. We dealt with this earlier as far as this being a largely unscientific poll, just more of a casual social media poll to gain a better understanding of what you think about the single-page FBI final report into the death of Gabby Petito. But we received 3,000 votes just for transparency reasons. We received 3,000 votes on Facebook Live. We also received, 1,000 votes on Twitter, so collective 4,000 votes across our social media platforms. And again, these votes indicative of Facebook and Twitter as well. Okay, folks, we got to get going here, buddy, on WFLA Now, on hashtag HJB. We really appreciate you spending some time with us. Let me end out this by saying the last time that we streamed with the Moab report, we knew that the next step, or the next thing that we can point to and say that our coverage will continue when this happens, was the FBI releasing their final report. Now that the FBI has released their final report, we don't know. I'm going to be very candid with all of you. I put out on Twitter earlier, is this it? Is this it? As far as our coverage of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie killing Gabby Petito, I don't know exactly I don't know what's next. I don't think that the story ends here. That's just my 2 cents on it. I think there's more ahead. I have no idea where the next weeks, months, or even years take us. Just a candid little piece, little nugget of where my head's at from a humble journalist here at WFLA. At every stage through this, I've pointed to what's next. Every single solitary live stream that we have done, I've ended on pretty much what is coming up next. This is the first live stream that I'm doing on this story where I honestly don't know. I don't know what's next. I don't know. There's no obvious next thing to point to where we can say, we'll see you when this happens. If there was, I would tell you, but we just don't know what is next. We could put in a FOIA request for results of the federal investigation, the FBI investigation, and that could come out in who knows how many years. And it could not yield anything much at all. WFLA Now might not even be a thing. I hope it is, but it might not even be a thing by the time that those results come back. So I don't know when the next live stream is going to be. I personally think and professionally think that there's more to this story that could come out. But will it? I just don't know, you guys. I just don't know. So if this is one of the final live streams that we do, it's been. I just would like to just thank everybody who's joined us on WFLA Now. I very much lean on others, yourselves included, commenters and the questions that you have and some of the things that you point out. Interactive journalism is about highlighting what our audience is the information that our audience is receiving in real time, highlighting how they're interpreting that information, and then the back and forth that occurs. That's interactive journalism. And so I'd like to thank all of you for commenting along here with us, and all the various people that we've had on our live streams on WFLA Now. Thinking of Josh Benson, Justin Checker, Masa Saidi's right in my view here working on a story, Walt Petito, Allison Henning, and our great photojournalist Paul Lamison and Eagle 8 HD. Really appreciate everyone who's made this. There's a saying that I have. It takes it's teamwork to make the stream work, and it really is. So I'd really like to thank all of them for participating and helping us do live streaming. Live streaming is still a very new thing in the world of news, and I would just like to thank everybody for participating, and all of you for watching along here with us. You can give me a follow. I still do more live streaming. It's my job here at WFLA. In fact, we have more live streams coming up today. It's just not on this story. It's on other stories that we are covering here in the Tampa Bay area at WFLA News Channel 8, your NBC station here in Tampa Bay, our beautiful area, Gulf Coast side of Florida. So more to get to here on WFLA Now. But I'll be very candid. Don't know when the next, and if there will be a next live stream on Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. If there is, I'll let you know about it on my social media accounts. Give me a follow at WFLAJB, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and I'll, of course, see you next time, everybody, here on WFLA Now. As a reminder, the very latest on this story, it's on WFLA.com, the WFLA app, the FBI's final report on the death of Gabby Petito. I have all the information from our terrific team here at WFLA.com, the WFLA app. We've got more ahead in the hours ahead on WFLA Now. For all you joining us on Facebook and on YouTube and WFLA.com, thank you so much. We'll see you next time, folks, here on WFLA Now.